So we back to ass mic quality, but it's just for today and today only. I couldn't find the little bit that goes into the little piece that goes into the socket. So because I know the quality is ass, I'm gonna try to keep this brief. That's the 76ers that I know and do not love last night, blowing a 24. But I know that's the news that everybody wants to talk about this morning, about the Sixers blowing a 24-point lead to wind up losing by 2. So yeah, there you have that. We're back to reality, back to life. But anyway, but jokes aside, man. I have some thoughts about last night. The majority of which I'm going to keep to myself. Because if y'all paid attention to the main channel, y'all already know what's the drum that I beat all the time. You feel me? But I will say this is that so I have 2 majors. One is journalism, the other is political science. And I did a lot of classwork, a lot of studying specifically when it comes to electoral politics. And if you watch electoral politics closely, these things are cyclical, right? And one of the more telling elections is the election immediately following the previous national election. Usually, it's considered a referendum on what's going on nationally, right? But again, these things are cyclical, so it believe as much, as we look at Trump as a disruptor, as a a this, a that, and whatever. This is the death of American politics as we know it. I forget exactly how many years, but and you can almost set your watch to is that every set number of years, things reset themselves, from Democrat to Republican, and it was just time. You know what I mean? I think that, matter of fact, Biden's first term was an outlier. You get what I'm saying? But you see, after Biden's first term, we wound up resetting back to normalcy, at least as far as the way that elections tend to go. And I said I was going to keep this brief. I don't know why I'm going off on a tangent. Anyway, I digress. So I have a few takeaways. Is that, the down ballot impact of Trump. I know that it's real easy for us to get, all in a tizzy about, Trumpism is the new norm. Trumpism, is going to take over. But it really gets you thinking about what life after Trump is going to look like. You know what I mean? Because one way or another, listen, he may want to be, he may try to be, but he ain't going to be president forever. He ain't going to be the dictator forever. You dig what I'm saying? And it really kind of gets you wondering about what life after Trump is going to look like, because and if you have, even just looking at, left-wing regimes that were built on, a strong central figure, a strong, cult of personality around. I I immediately think of, of Joseph Broz Tito in Yugoslavia. You dig what I'm saying? This is what happens when you build an entire, ideology around around personality. You dig what I'm saying? It just so happened that Broz was, I don't even know if I would call him a benevolent dictator, but he wasn't a complete despot, right? He actually had the best interest of his people in mind. Even if he ain't always get it right, he did everything he did with the intention. He did with, the mindset of making Yugoslavia the best Yugoslavia it could possibly be. You dig what I'm saying? So yeah, it begs the question of what will American conservatism, what will, racism obviously, but what and or who, if anybody, is going to be the central figure to rally around. And it really begins, for me at least, to bring up these questions about, these fractures within, within that party. We already see, MAGA, fractures within the MAGA faction of, the Republican Party. And I don't know, maybe I'm, extrapolating a bit too much, maybe, because at the end of the day, you always, can point a finger at the hard R's and, everybody rally around that, right? But as far as, last night was a big night for Democrats the country over. And that's whatever, liberal, leftist, whatever the F. Everybody within that umbrella of being left of center, or at least theoretically left of center. It was a big night last night. Here in Jersey, Chitterelli got dog walked. at least from what I looked at. Maybe maybe things changed. I know he definitely lost, because they called it. They called it at like 9 o'clock, if that. So maybe the numbers look a bit better today. But as I was explaining to somebody last night, they were saying, 46% is still not, good enough in this current political climate, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm disappointed. I'm like, dog, you gotta understand. Losing 46 to what y'all do the math. If there's only 2 major party candidates running, and you lose that election by 46%, dog, that's like Richard Nixon, Hubert Humphrey. That is, you know what that is? That's 40 to 22. You know what I mean? Go Birds. That's what that is. That is a dog walk. But, Mickey Sherrill won in Jersey. I believe Jersey City has a progressive mayor. Detroit got one last night. The Virginia governor. What else am I missing? It was a bunch of different elections going on last night, and not just the one that everybody was talking about, and everybody and like I said, I have my thoughts about that. I have my thoughts about how and why, even though this is New York City we talking about, you feel me, New York is always going to be a big deal because it's New York. But still, it still kind of blows me how much at the end of the day, a municipal election, because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. And we're talking about a municipal election, you feel me, captured the hearts and minds of a nation. You dig what I'm saying? So that still kind of throws me. I'm not even gonna hold you, but I'm also not gonna rain on y'all's parade. I'm also not, gonna piss on your head and call it lemonade today. You feel me? Y'all take this day and you take your victory lap. If you feel like taking a victory lap, go ahead and take your victory lap. And I will say this about Mamdani. is that I'm cautiously optimistic for this fact. Again, not because of the election itself specifically, because it's New York. What happens in they ain't gonna have no direct impact on me. You ain't gonna have no direct impact on anybody except y'all that's in the 5 boroughs. Staten Island is getting ready to jump into the bay right now. You dig what I'm saying? Based off of them exit polls, but there you have it. And this is really where I'm going to wrap up at, y'all, because again, the audio was ass, and yeah. So there is potential for Mamdani to be in AOC. You dig what I'm saying? I know that AOC's star is not what it once was. I know that AOC is not, you know, the progressive darling that she once was, and for good reasons. But one thing you can't take away from her, and this is really what is and what will be AOC's legacy, is I remember when she ran, and what made this such a big deal is for somebody that vocally progressive, like legitimately progressive in her politics. What AOC was and still is, by the way, is she is an old school Democrat. You dig what I'm saying? She is, and that's what made that such a big deal, is that she is this wave of, you know, if you want to look at Ayanna Pressley, you want to look at Rashid, I forget, pardon me for forgetting her last name, but in Minnesota, Ilhan Omar, and there's a bunch of different ones that you can, Jasmine Crockett, there's a bunch of different ones that you can name, Cori Bush, you know what I mean, not Booker, but Bush in Missouri. This wave of young, demonstratively progressive Democrats in national office, the so-called Justice Democrats, AOC opened the floodgates for that. And it created at least a faction within the Democratic Party that looked a lot more like Hubert Humphrey than Bill Clinton, right? The Democrat, this is the Democratic Party, or what they represented, as far as I saw it, was the Democratic Party of, you know, of the Kennedys, you feel me, of Jack and Bobby Kennedy, you feel me, of Hubert Humphrey, like I said, of LBJ, of Jimmy Carter, you know what I mean? That's what they represented, right? And so the biggest takeaway, and this is what I really wanted to get at, you know, because one of the things that people miss when you study or when you read, you know, about, you know, Huey and Kwame Ture and, you know, Asada and all of these different other ones and whatever and whatnot, was that they were convinced not only that they were going to win, but that they were going to win in their lifetimes. You know what I mean? And even, you know, obviously, you know, Huey didn't live to see old age, but when it comes to Kwame, when it comes to Asada, when it comes to any of those other ones, you know, as they got to the end of their life, even if they didn't believe, you know, Angela Davis, even if they didn't or don't believe that they'll see it in their lifetimes, they did believe, all right, even if I don't see it, my kids are going to see it. All of the work that I put in, it's going to pay off. You know, we're going to win. And I've talked about this several different times on the main channel, right? That is the greatest trick that the devil ever pulled with us, is to convince us that we wasn't going to win. Can I get an amen from somebody. Y'all don't want to help me today. You know, there go my inner Pew baby right there. But you know, there's that line from from The Usual Suspects, the greatest trick that the devil ever pulled. But that is the greatest trick, is convince folk that we wasn't going to win and that it was impossible for us to win. So we need to just work within the confines of what we got, even if what we got ain't really working. AOC, I think, convinced a lot of people. In a lot of ways, Mamdani is AOC's legacy, because I don't believe without AOC that you get a Mamdani. I don't think you do, because that win convinced a lot of people that, okay, we don't have to just settle for third way Democrats anymore. We don't have to just settle for, you know, neoliberalism, you know, parading itself as progressive. We don't gotta settle for that. There is a chance. There is an avenue. And for me, I think that's the biggest takeaway from last night, is that perhaps folk will look at what is happening, we'll see, you know, the current zeitgeist, the current state of things, and say, okay, there is a path to win. Let us start putting up. I remember, and this is what I'll wrap up on, I remember when Obama got elected. And I remember, you know, all of, you know, my Hotep family members, all of the barbershop Hoteps and whatever and whatnot that were, you know, beating the drum against Obama being what we were trying to make him out to be. Or not me, because I even as a 17-year-old, I kind of clocked it then. You feel me? Give me my cookie. But the takeaway that they took was, all right, we got a black man in there. You feel me? Even if he's not the change that we're looking for, even if he's not the change that we need, he is a step in the right direction. And perhaps somebody, you feel me, perhaps one of us, like really real one of us, like one of us from the trenches, will see that and say, all right, if he can do it, then why can't I? More importantly, folk will see that it is not at all impossible to get a black man elected president, because I have family who who grew up during Jim Crow, who grew up in the Jim Crow South, who thought it was impossible. They would never see a black man elected the president. You dig what I'm saying? Now those people are convinced. So now you got people, now folk have seen that not only can you win, but win convincingly. Somebody was socialist in their in their descriptor. It is possible, and perhaps we'll get more people that are running for mayor of their city, running for altar. That, and again, those of y'all who know my feelings, know how I feel about electoral politics, kind of already knew this is where I was going to go at with this, is that you'll have people who say, all right, I'm going to run for mayor of my city as Democratic Socialist, or as straight up socialist, or as whatever. I'm just going to run without declaring a party, but this is where my ideology lines up. You dig what I'm saying? Somebody will run for, you know, ward leader. Somebody will run for city council. Somebody will run for whatever, for district attorney. You feel me? For county prosecutor, for, you know, county clerk, for sheriff, for whatever. Governor even. I'll go as far up as governor. You feel me? Based off of that. It's not impossible if you in one of those solid rock blue states like California or Massachusetts. I won't go so far as to say New Jersey. You feel me? Those of y'all who know about Jersey know, but possibly New York. You feel me? One of those those solid blue states, it's not impossible. So that's my main takeaway, is that, you know, perhaps somebody will be convinced that we can win. You dig what I'm saying? And win without cutting corners, and win without compromising ideals and compromising values. So yeah, there you had that. Big night for the employed. There. Deuces.